Sorry, I just fixed it. I'm sorry, Jan. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So, at some point I do need verification that, the car show will be approved and without a problem. And spending money as far as that goes. We really like to get banners for our light posts. I gave Kelly quite a few books of, the banners that you put up. Dennis went and he said we have about 15 poles. The brackets, I believe, are already up, but we do need pins. So we do need some of the hardware in addition to the banners. We put up 17 wreaths, so I don't know if you're looking at 17 banners or if you'd like to extend that or less than that. That's something that you need to decide. Kelly is the head. She's got the books. You have to, go. She's gonna come to me afterwards. When you decided. So we need to, have that so that we can order those as soon as possible. Because you do have the 30-inch long posts and 5/8 diameter rods that will be good for the pins. That we'll need the pins for. The second one is, I know the Christmas tree this year really did look nice. It looked much better than it has in the past. However, if Trustee Yates is willing to donate his boom truck, the car show will pay for the second boom truck so that the lights can be put on properly. And I'd really like to see some of those, more of those stars that were on it. It kind of added to the tree a little bit. And we did have a nice turnout. So that went really well. But I am willing to take the money and pay for one day boom. So that 2 booms can work on that tree. If Mr. Yates is willing to cooperate with that. The last thing is, not last, but one of the things is, you all know we lost Jake. And Jake was a big part of our show. He was our family for 13 years. And he was more of a son than anything else. What we talked about doing was getting a flag. He was very patriotic. He was probably the most patriotic young man I've ever known in my life. What we talked about, me and Dennis, was getting a flagpole in the park between Dawson and what is that, Jake's, where there is no flagpole, and putting a flagpole and flag up, and just a small plaque that would say in honor of Jake Jensen, because he was a big part of the car show, which is a big part of this village. So I need an okay for that. The final thing is, I've been informed that when the wreaths came down, they were quite damaged. Because they were just kind of thrown in the garage in a pile. I don't know, I didn't see it, or I was just what I've been told. So there is some damage to the wreaths. So if you plan on using the wreaths for Christmas next year, somebody's gonna have to take a look at them and fix them up, because I'm not doing it for a 3rd year. I just can't. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, because if they straighten up and the damage is covered, they look nice up there. So, okay, and that was it for car show stuff. Did you want to look at the brochure? Pass it down.
Thank you, Jan.
Like I said, it's not complete, but it's a preliminary.
I'd like to add 1.2 that Jake did a lot of work around the village
Yes, you did.
on his own time and on for free. So just to add that to what you had said.
excuse me, but the reason I need an answer on the car show tonight is because of the Lions and the Optimist Club. All have to start their planning. And I usually start in January and we're now in February, so I have to get moving if there's not a problem.
Do you have any more comments? Any more comments? Moving on, discussion and possible action on approval of Atlantic community events, including Easter Bunny event, open healing walk, and community rummage report. Rummage sale, I'm sorry. We did get a letter from Steve and Liz. Easter Bunny, Saturday, April 1st. Land Hope and Healing Awareness Walk, Saturday, the 19th of August, sorry. And she is looking at either May 13th or June 3rd. She's working with Whispering Ridge so that that's all held on the same day. These events have all previously been here in the village. So do we have any discussion?
Only whether or not we can add the car.
Should we get the car show? Is it proper to add it to this? Or whatever?
It's a Atlantic community event.
Yeah.
So
It's not sponsored, but it is.
Okay, I would also like to add Cars on Main last Sunday of July.
I'll make a motion that we accept the Atlantic community events, including the addendum with the Landing Car Show.
second,
We have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion and possible action on approval of operator's license. We have two of them here. One for 12/29 from Shannon O'Dwyer. Chief, you checked this one, looks good. This just came in very recently. Do we have any discussion on this one?
on the Shannon O'Dwyer. No. Oh. Are you looking for individual motions?
I think we need to split this.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve the Shannon O'Dwyer operator's license.
We have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion on Shannon O'Dwyer? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. The second one on Maryland. My High. I think we all got the storybook on this. Nothing real recent on this one. But did you get a chance to look at this one back there?
No, I did not. Yeah. What establishment is it even for?
That's what I was wondering.
'Cause that's the link also.
Or Kenny?
Okay.
The chief's notes on here, this, he's not had anything real late, but there were several,
Pretty substantial charges. They weren't,
yeah.
I mean, having felony.
And numerous.
What's your gut feeling on this one, chief?
I wouldn't recommend one way or the other, but I will just say that of all the backgrounds I've ever done on these applicants, this is probably the most voluminous.
That was the word I was thinking. You only asked half a word, don't speak.
He's had no convictions since 2015, so that's a good thing, but the amount of stuff on here is
Serious, so.
I see that he's number 4 on the list. And he pretty much says, well, we've done.
Not only with the multiple prior convictions, but the fact that the application is even filled out completely, it's incomplete also. And for that reason, I would make a motion that we deny it at this time.
A second.
we have a motion and second to deny Marilyn Mai. We have any more discussion on this one? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion to deny carried. Discussion and possible action regarding proposals to develop a streetscape plan and related services related to the village's TIF district.
You want me to start this one out? I'll start this one out here and then we can get some feedback from Ben. So if some of you may recall, long time ago in the galaxy far away, we started some discussions. This kind of spawned out of some of the ARPA stuff. And then we created a small steering committee to start to talk with a firm that could help us solidify a more comprehensive overarching plan for the village in terms of streetscaping, beautification, and things that we could use TID funds for to help improve the long-term, I guess, appearance and functionality of the village and primarily the main street area here. So we had reached out to a firm called Parkitecture. We had previously brought that proposal to the board. At that time, the board had asked if and why we had any other proposals, and if not, why not? Fair question. So I went back to actually the gentleman that prepared the initial proposal, provided us with another option. And I was given another options from a business owner that had a relationship with somebody who had ties to land. I reached out to those 2 other firms, asked them to try to meet with us so that they could get brought up to speed on what we were looking for in terms of scope and pricing and what our kind of goal was here. One of the firms denied the meeting and to actually present a proposal. They didn't feel that it was really suited for them. The other one was Vanderwall, who you may recall did our comprehensive plan amendment back 5 years ago or so, I believe. So obviously big players in this arena. Architecture, Blake comes from a firm similar in nature to this, I believe, but now is a principal in a smaller firm that he runs. So you had the 2 proposals in your packets. They are obviously quite a bit different in presentation, scope, details, things like that. I think it's going to be very difficult to ever get a true apples to apples comparison on something like that. So that's the big picture. I don't know if Ben, you had anything you wanted to add from your perspective of reviewing these or not.
Yeah, I just took a look at the scope on both, and the one from Architecture was the result of him spending a decent amount of time in the village, and he presented his scope and fee in sort of an a la carte fashion at the end. And he includes a couple things like the band wall, proposal didn't include, and I don't think it's because of any omission from Vanderwall, just on their. You know, they didn't glean as much, there wasn't as much participation. Patrick was the only one who was available to meet with them versus I think several people from the.
Yeah, it was all three of us and yourself at the initial meeting with Blake, and it was just me for.
Yeah. From what I can, decipher here, Blake. In that meeting, we were pretty clear with him that public involvement was gonna be a big piece of this, participating in multiple meetings, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one major difference, or I should say another major difference between these two. Is the architecture proposal has a lot more meetings, just generally. It's not to say that you couldn't get that out of Vanderwall, but it just underscores that these are not apples to apples, so. In a situation like this, I would just recommend that you consider who you're comfortable with and pin down the scope that you actually want them to do. And negotiate from there.
When you say long-term scope for this, what kind of long-term are you talking?
Well, you know, the idea is rather than us kind of sit up here and throw a bunch of ideas that, you know, what we could do or should do in the village, the goal was to put together a solid, comprehensive, detailed, phased approach plan. And that's not to say that gets etched in stone and can't be changed at some point down the line. But in order to really affect some real progress and have some goal-oriented direction, you need to have a goal. You need to have something on paper that will help the planning commission and help them drive some of their decisions in terms of design standards, if there's new construction or repurposing of properties, or if we want to go out to other agencies to try to garner funding on behalf of businesses or residents who might want to do improvements to their structures or their buildings or their properties, at least then we can point to the fact that we have a clear plan and it's on paper and here it is, and this is what we're trying to achieve, and this is why we want this funding. Without it, I think going to some of these other agencies and trying to assist in cases like this. So case in point, like the Betty Ann's proposal that was brought to the planning commission some time ago. You know, that could be a really nice first step to some revitalization on this intersection here. And there might very likely be some funding available to them from other state and federal agencies. But without a clear vision or some sort of plan from the village to back that up and to support that, I think it would be very challenging for them. So the committee's thought is that we do it in a phased approach, so it becomes a little more manageable and attainable. We can focus some immediate results more towards the city center. And then we identify some other areas as you move outward in the village. But the idea being that there's some very specific things itemized and listed in there, drawn out, rendered. They help with design standards, like I mentioned. And basically just having again, a roadmap to work from going forward. Again, that's not to say that, you know, these get etched in stone into perpetuity. You know, at some later time, the vision might change for the village, but at least it's a start and it gives us something to base some action off of. Again, this would be funded by TID. Most of the projects would also be funded by TID. So these are opportunities that are time sensitive in nature. But those TIDs are fairly new. Yes, sir.
One event that triggered the need to revisit this after several months was even at the last planning commission meeting with Ron Cole's proposal to put a pole building up, like, you know, like right on the Bud line. And the village ordinance the architectural standard right now in the ordinance is, hey, it must blend in with the surroundings. Other communities and concept would be for, I think in Blake's proposal, he's got the downtown district design guideline. And it would give people an idea right out of the gate, oh, this is kind of what the village is looking for, you know, a certain amount of land and stone on the exterior or something could be part of that, but you know, that would also give the board, you know, if the folks from Betty Ann's come back and ask for a proposal, you could kind of have a guide to size that up against. So, okay, yes, this meets some of the objectives of our streetscape plan, et cetera. We talked before about like even Mids and Bivs is in the TID now. So if the village wanted to do something to try to create some historic preservation grants or facade improvement grants or partnerships that way, this would kind of just set the guideline so that you have, like Patrick said, a vision and a goal of going into each one of those situations if they become real, of knowing what you're aiming for, and how it's all kind of coordinated together and meets your objectives.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of along the lines of, you know, the saying, if you don't have a target, you'll miss it every time, right? So, I think, you know, this is, to me, I'm in favor of the architecture proposal. I just personally, I like the idea. Well, I had established a good rapport with Blake. I like the fact that it's a little smaller firm. I think I feel like we would get more attention from them.
I like the fact that they're willing to do a couple of meetings with the public also.
Yeah, I mean, Ben and I both stressed that would be a huge component of this. I mean, that would really ultimately be in my mind, the driving force behind it. You know, the community this is their opportunity to come out and say, here's what we want. And, you know, we just kind of, you know, man the ship while hopefully the community kind of drives it.
I personally think it's important in that one of the meetings I was in with Patrick. Historically, nothing has ever been presented for more than a year or two in advance. It's been fly by your seat in the pants. And where are we at? I mean, here we're updating Brenda's software that should have been done years ago. And we've got to get out of that type of, instead of being a reactive, being a proactive community. You know, this is a chunk of money. We did adjust the TID boundaries. When I talked to Ben about that, it was not to force anything on any businesses, but to make another possible funding sources. And let's all work together.
Yeah, it's the whole goal is to create opportunities, right? So. This is, you know, it's a sizable undertaking. This is something that will take a lot of time to get solidified and take a lot of involvement from us and the community. But I think it's a good opportunity for us as a village.
Is there a lot of funding sources out there, Ben? If we put together this project, is there a lot of funding available for this?
So the number one source would be the TIF districts, right? So making some of the streetscape improvements, because you funded through that, et cetera.
The sidewalks.
Yeah, within the right of way, the streetscape would include everything within the right of way. But it would just be within the TIF districts. Okay, so if you're talking about sidewalks outside of that,
No, I'm talking. Landon Road.
oh, otherwise. This helps with, I would say there's so many facets to community development block grants. You know. Which was the program that was used for private plumbing. They have other categories for community vitalization, whatever. So having something like this where potential funding sources know that, okay, this is a plan that's already been adopted by the governing body. They like giving funding to stuff that already has momentum and approvals and direction as opposed to funding ideas, if that makes sense. So
Right.
I think it would make, for the sources that are out there, it makes for stronger cases.
Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation as well.
Any comments, Sector?
No, I think the point is very fundamental. Government funding follows a pre-established general plan. They do not want to start from scratch. They're looking almost for a shovel-ready conceptual framework where you can focus on a particular segment of the community and have a specific proposal rather than some ambiguous goal to make the community more attractive.
So what are you looking for, Bill Patrick?
Well,
I think it's just a decision of which contract we want to work with.
yeah. I
And
mean,
I'll agree with Patrick in regards to architecture, because when we had discussed this with the ARPA committee and we were discussing the beautification and a plan for the village down the road, they were very, very accepted and had a lot of input. And I thought they worked well with us when we were looking at it as the ARPA committee with some of the funding we had available to start this whole process. So I mean, in my eyes, I would agree with Patrick, and I think architecture is probably the firm we'd like to go with, at least in my opinion.
I have a second.
So, do we need anyone else have a discussion before you make a motion, or?
Do you want
If
to
they
set
have-
a cap limit on dollar amount to start with, or how do you want to work this?
Well, then can the TIF money start going towards that part of it already, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so initially, when this came before us, I'll just reiterate, my opinion was to engage the full scope of work. And while that does represent some significant dollars, again, I feel that it's important for us to put a complete plan together. And just set that, at least set a baseline up front. That's just my opinion. Others may, prefer a stepped approach to that as well. There's no right or wrong answer. Just my feeling is that the pricing that we were given, given the scope of work, it seems like a reasonable number. So I would be in favor of, just,
The full amount.
yeah, I'm just moving forward with
Good.
the board. So,
As you had said, these 5 areas that are outlined on architecture's proposal. As Patrick said, is a stepped process. So this may be over a course of 15 years. We do what we can. We allow the TIF funds to fund a lot of this. And it's something that progresses. And like I said, we have the community input of what they would like to see. And I think you're right, Patrick. I think we need to do the whole dollar amount for those 5 areas, because it's something that'll be with us, even if we don't get to area 4, area 5 for 10 or 15 years. We'll still have that master plan, which we can always go back to. And if we need to, like you said, we need to, modify it or the direction of the village changes, we can change it, but I'd have to agree with you and say we need to allow the full amount.
We can certainly tackle these in any order that we see fit. They don't necessarily have to go in numerical order as they're listed in here. Again, that would be another thing we could all talk about, and maybe these 5 aren't the right answer, but I think at least this gives us a starting point to start solidifying some of this. I think in the initial discussions, the idea was that we had the smaller steering committee. Then I think we were going to expand it out into more stakeholders, probably similar to the ARPA committee, where we would have maybe some board members involved, some community people involved. And then we would start bringing in more public discussion, maybe public meetings, presentation boards probably up here for a period of time that can be viewed by the public prior to those meetings so that they could provide some meaningful feedback. I don't know if any of you ever have an opportunity or a reason to go to Village Hall in Menominee Falls, for example, but they're always doing stuff up there, and they always have all their stuff right in the main lobby, all kind of presented on easels and, you know, all drawn up in nice presentations, and you know, that's what I think we need to have going forward with something like this.
40,000 residents. We have under 2. It's a big difference. We wouldn't have as many.
Well, we'll have smaller boards and smaller easels.
Hopefully, our pictures will be smaller, Chris.
No, we can blow the picture of something aim up there.
We'll have Polaroids, not taped to the craft paper.
Just remember, everything you build in the town has to be maintained. So don't spend too much on putting it in and then not have enough money to maintain it. Keep it up.
That was-
Talk about the 5 areas. Does everybody know what areas we're talking about?
Know that everybody does, but yeah, that's a good idea. And so area 1 was Main Street visioning and concepts. Area 2 is the Jakes Park concept plan, which is just to kind of outline what we might be able to do there. Area 3 would be a possible Village Civic Center redevelopment plan. Similar to what Mr. Newman had worked on previously many years ago. Area 4 downtown district design guidelines, and then the village entry signage plan, which I believe if we want to move forward, you know, Mr. Kudex had set some things in motion with some large land and monuments. You know, that would likely, if we go that route, then certainly would cost less for that planning, because a lot of that upfront work's already been done. Those are the general ideas or areas. Again, not necessarily set in stone, but
So the total amount for area 1 through 5 comes up to $65,240. So do we want to have the motion where it does not exceed that dollar amount at this time to get them started? I mean,
I think that would be. Seem like reasonable to me. If
okay,
everybody else agrees.
well, I'll make a motion that we accept the proposal from Architecture for the village redevelopment and set a dollar limit not to exceed $65,240, which I will reiterate, most of that, if not all of that, will be funded by the TIF district. So citizens are aware that's not coming out of, you know, tax dollars.
I'll second.
Yes, after.
I'm not sure what the balances are in the TIP funds. But Brenda, do you know if there is sufficient balance for that?
No.
Otherwise, a budget amendment would have to be contemplated.
Yeah, I think the idea is that we're agreeing to move forward under the premise that that might be the dollar amount. I don't know that we're necessarily looking to spend that dollar amount right up front.
We don't have the 2021 audit done yet, so once The auditor's coming next month, so we'll know a little bit better then, but we did get more TID money in the last budget period.
But part of, I think what you're talking about, when we have this next meeting with Ellers to outline some of the obligations that we have outstanding with the TIDs, that would be a good time for us to maybe even beforehand, I can let Phil know that this might be another area that needs to be looked at as well.
The only reason why I raised that point is that under Wisconsin municipal law, community can only commit to expenditures within their budget. And a solid budget contemplates having the resources. The good thing about the fact that there is TIP funding is that a lot of agencies, both at the national and state level, are looking for cost sharing arrangements. And oftentimes, because they want to maximize the impact of the available dollars, they will not undertake the underwriting entirely 100% of a project that will participate, maybe on a 50-50 basis. You see that extensively throughout the state with the Department of Transportation, where they put in highway improvements and they embellish those improvements with bicycle lanes or sidewalks, but expect local community participation in that regard in varying amounts. So I would think you can consider amending the motion subject to
Budget.
confirmation of available resources, not to exceed those available resources.
Then I'll reiterate my motion and amend it and accept the proposal from Parkitecture for the village-wide cityscape planning with TIF funds not to exceed the allowed or available amount in the TIF funding at this time.
And my second, it's pretty about that.
You know, we have an amended motion and second, do we have any more discussion? I have a question. We're talking about spending $65,000 here. I brought it up at a budget meeting to spend $7,000 to fix the leaking garage roof that's been leaking for several years. I won't share the comments that were made. But Chris brought up a very valid point. We're talking about redesigning and making our village beautiful. We have to fix what we have. So if we're not going to fix a leaking garage roof, how do we explain this to the residents? We're spending 65 grand to come up with a plan. But we haven't fixed the outside of the village hall, the leaking garage roof, some other issues. I think we have to figure out how we're going to maintain and improve. So I would like some discussion on that before I call a vote, because it's all part of this package in my mind.
Yeah, so there are some, Colleen has been working on some quotes from some people for some work to the village hall. Not surprisingly, she's having difficulty getting communication from some of those contractors at this time. But that is in the works. In terms of the roof, I was opposed to it. I'll openly admit that, because I questioned the value of putting money into that structure at all. I questioned what are we using it for? So if we're using it and we have a good use for the structure, then by all means, it may justify spending that money on it. If the garage is just there because it's been there forever and it's got numerous there's numerous concerns with that garage. I think you would agree. The question just becomes, do we want to continue to sink money into it if it's not really being used for anything important?
But it kind of is being used for things that are important, like all of our holiday decorations. Which apparently now some of them have been damaged because they weren't put away correctly.
But so the question I had, time, and again, I'm just stating my opinion, and that was just me stating the opinion that anything that we use in there that's supposed to be in there could just as easily be stored in the old fire base. Could it not?
I think you need to go
There's
out there
no
and take
room
a
out there.
look.
I've been.
Ron and I had to go out there with Dennis and Jeff and make a spot to put our water meters in. Police department has stuff in that garage. Land Business Association, some of our lawn and garden equipment gets stored in there. Lions Club and the car show has stuff in there. And, you know, I agree, we need to come up with a long-term plan, but we gotta come up with something. Because I know there was discussion about a new village hall. Or doing some major renovations here. And one question to that, where does this money come from? Because I think we've got to watch, just because the TID money's there, to be careful. Not. To bury the village in debt. I don't know if that's a good way to put it. But. So that we don't mortgage our soul like the kid with the new credit card. Maps it out. And my thought is, if we repair the garage, we're gonna have to fix the parking lot either way. Do we do it now and buy ourselves time? Or do we just let it fall apart? And then eventually we end up without that storage space. And part of my thought of fixing that was, and this will be something coming up in the next month or two or so. Well, I have fire trucks been sitting in a guy's garage. And I talked to Ron if we got it fixed of storing it in there. But that is very possibly going to change. So I think we kind of have to look at what order we're gonna spend this money and not shoot ourselves in the foot and fix what we have. And do we want to spend this money with architecture, which I think we need to do, but we also need to have money. What good is it if Colleen goes up and gets us bids and there's no money left in the tin?
And why is the right hand not working with the left hand? I mean, you know what's going on with Colleen, but
But that's ARPA funds.
It's, yeah, that's our.
That's the ARPA stuff.
How much is ARPA? ARPA's ARPA, TID's TID.
Right, they're two different ones.
And we're in a downward economic cycle with the.
I mean, if you,
That crisis.
Don, you can come to the ARPA meetings too. I mean, you're invited to be those. Every time we've had them, we've. and you've been, no, I mean, you've been to a couple of them. So I mean,
And I sent an email out early this spring that I was no longer available for daytime. And the last meeting where the signs were approved for the 15 grand, I got that meeting notice a half an hour before.
No,
And I
all those
Those came
calendar
out.
invites go out weeks ahead.
Right.
That
not
was the
true.
only one I got, and that's. not
you
the
might want to
only
get
one that I
a different,
did.
No, they all go out, you get the
Weeks
same
ahead of time.
invitation everybody else does. So, sorry, that's not true. This was the $7,000 for the roof for that was a budget item that was brought up. So again, that's not TID. So by all means, we can look at using TID funds on the garage. That was a budget meeting. I felt personally that we had better places to spend that $7,000 in our budget. Like raises for police officers, you know, software, right, computer software, things like that. Rather than a roof.
And it came down to us trying to figure out how we're gonna get $3,000 out of it at the end of the year.
Right, it's always a struggle, and a lot of people don't understand that our budget is a very, very difficult thing to balance, and I would love to have more police coverage. I'd love to have 2 squads available in the village 24/7, 365. The fact of the matter is, we just don't have the budget for it.
Well, that's where if we come up with this fancy plan, how are we gonna come up with the budget to maintain this stuff when it's done?
I think that's a part of the discussion of moving it forward, is the limited amount of maintenance that's gonna be required.
So that's one of the main reasons that I called this meeting with Phil Koss and from Ellers,
And 3 of us showed up.
and was to understand what the TID performance looked like. Was there an opportunity to close the TIDs early, and what impact does that have on the levy moving forward, right? So that's what I personally wanted to understand better. And so that we could do some better planning on an annual basis when we come to budget time. There are some strategies that Phil brought up that can help us moving forward when we do our levy limit worksheets. So he brought up some strategies that I'll make sure that we talk about at budget time next year. Also, the budget meetings are open to the public. Anybody can come if they've got some ideas on how to, you know, come up with extra money for a lot of this stuff. I think we're all ears. Jerry comes every year.
I think that a lot of the citizens of Lennon don't realize that over half of our budget is eaten up by the fire department or fire protection from Menominee Falls. Over half of our budget money every year goes to that. And in October, when we're trying to figure out our budget, last time it was raised by what, 22% or 21%? A 20%, at least a 20% increase from the following year, or I'm sorry, from the previous year.
It's too bad we don't have our own fire department anymore.
But, you know, this is a small village and we struggle every year to figure out how to make the budget work. And, you know, if people have ideas, we're open to them, but I mean, just come to one of the budget meetings and see how thin we are in, you know, the choices that we make and how we have to make them to keep everything running. So it's difficult. It's not an easy thing to do. And you rack your brain trying to figure out where you can cut corners and where you can't. So
I'm all for spending the $7,000 to fix the roof. If we can use it from TID funds and maybe even shore up that back wall that's about to fall into that parking lot and maybe get some paint on it or some new siding and trim. I mean, it looks horrible.
And I do see the point that we are going to be working on Main Street and the front of the village. You know, and then if we have people that are pulling in the back, and there is that point, because it does look like crap out there. Doesn't need a lot of work.
But overall, is the structure that we have, we're saving, or do we have to budget something that's gonna be,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a question
how
for
much do you spend
for
on?
this board to decide at some point, I guess. You know, like I said, my argument against it was to not spend the money in the budget. It's different than the TIDs. It's different than the ARPA funding. There's 3 different mechanisms that are all working here together and juggling around, and they're oftentimes getting confused and mixed together. So it's important that we all understand that they are 3 different things, and they have different goals or intended purposes, right? So that's my answer to your question about the roof.
Because you know that question's gonna be asked by more than one person, that, you know, this is architecture's one piece, budget's one, ARPA's another one. But somehow we gotta figure out how to present this all as a united plan. To accomplish a long-range goal, but we gotta take care of short-term needs. On our way to our long-term goal.
Absolutely, and Chris has brought up a very valid point too, that we have to have a plan going forward to. What's the long-term cost for some of these things, right? And what's our exposure to doing some of these things, right? So that's something that we should also strive to understand is, you know, what's the end game for that? What's the useful life, right? Things like that. What's the maintenance requirement for this? You know, how do we protect this investment over time? Do we have the manpower and the resources to do it? Or what's the funding mechanism going to be? There's a lot of questions to be answered and asked, frankly. So keep asking them. I mean, they're all good points. They're all things that need to at some point be thought about and addressed. In the right context.
Hey, we have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion? Any comments after? No, Ben? Okay, motion and second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you, Patrick.
Yep.
Discussion and possible action on engagement letter from Von Briesen and Loper. That's you, Hector.
Yeah. What I have submitted to you is what, I, under our basic rules of professional responsibility and required to submit whenever there is a modification of an arrangement. This is something that's done on an annual basis with all of our municipal plans.
Our budget.
We're gonna pay them for you.
Touche. What was the previous hourly rate?
Uh, 275.
So it's going down?
Should be 250.
Oh,
It didn't go down.
Yeah, no.
Not 20% of the fire department. So that's good.
Do you have any more discussion? Prompting you, Pat.
Oh. I'll make a motion that we, that the village president executes the engagement letter for Von Briesen and Roper. Second.
You have a motion and second. Any more discussion on keeping Hector? Hey, gotta laugh. We need that today. Do you have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
You can't escape this sector. Item 13, discussion and possible action regarding payment for for payment number 3 from Vinton Construction Company for contract 2-2022 Custom Lane reconstruction.
So this is a big pay request. They sat on this for a long time and now they're requesting a little over $1.1 million this application. We've reviewed their tickets and materials and everything, and would recommend you go ahead and pay this request.
I did not find it in here. We still have a little bit of a holdback on this.
Yeah, this is not a final pay application.
Okay.
45,000.
Yeah, so retainage is stepped down to 5% because they're fairly complete with the project. So retainage, Patrick's right, it's $45,403.
I'll make a motion to accept payment number 3 for Minton Construction for contract 2-2022.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Yes, Ecker.
I recall that there were issues with regards to lawns and curbing. Has there been any progress in the resolution of those questions?
As we would have it, that's a different contract.
Yeah.
That's part of the water main contract. This is just covered for Winter Lane. I think contractor had both contracts.
We have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. I'm gonna flip these two around, discussion and possible action on generator repairs replacement. I would like to table this until next month. 2 reasons, we don't have all the information in regards to the replacement of the generator yet. We hope to have that and have Sarah from Mid-City here next month. So I would like to table that. And also, second part of that, I want Ron Nellis here to be part of that discussion.
Make a motion to table item number 15.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Item 14, discussion and possible action regarding the system-wide leak detection study. My feeling on this here is Sarah Nunn. This would be a fill-in job. Part of this is 3rd shift work. And we're coming into construction season. She negotiated, we had budgeted, I believe, $10,000. This bid came in at $9,100. This is a time sensitive. If we wait another month until Ron is here for this, we will lose our place in line. And we may also lose the budgeted amount. Comments, Ben?
So we had $10,000 in the USDA rural development contingency identified even before the project started to do a leak detection survey of the whole system when we're done. And we put that number in there, a couple of years ago. So really happy that CTW and American Leak Detection are able to do it in that amount still. And to your point, the reason they do it 3rd shift is they want to go out and do the leak detection when normal water use should be pretty low. That helps the leaks kind of stand out, helps them find them a little more efficiently. So yeah, I agree with your sentiment on that. I think it's kind of time sensitive to make sure that it gets done.
Yeah, I think it was great that Sarah was able to kind of wrangle, was it American Water? I think it was, when they routed Land and Estates. So I'll make a motion that we move forward with the leak detection survey at the earliest opportunity.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second to proceed with the leak detection study only. Do you have any more discussion?
I think I'll just add the one other reason that this is important, I think, is that, there have been some intermittent kind of water use issues within the system, as you're aware. There's additional work that we're wanting to get done to the Whispering Ridge well. And I think it's important that we clean up any of these leaks and minimize any waste before we take any other systems offline.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree, because right now, if Land and Estates well is shut down, we have approximately 18 hours of water in our system. So I think this is our best starting point. And because it's pre-construction season, we got to break on the price. And it's within budget numbers.
Yep.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Discussion and possible action on intergovernmental agreement with the village of Menominee Falls and the village of Lannon.
I can start with this one, so, Matt Janicki, the utility manager at Menominee Falls, sent over to Brenda and I to review a maintenance agreement on the Macklin lift station, so that's on the Lannon Interceptor. And there's 2 lift stations on that interceptor. All the flow from Lannon leaves just by gravity through meter station and then gets down to Macklin, which is in the falls technically, and it gets pumped. Goes to Linwood in Sussex, where they pump it to the treatment plant. So the way it's always gone for the history of the interceptor is that Menominee Falls Utilities maintains Macklin, because that's in the falls. And it picks up a lot of flow from the falls also. And then Sussex maintains Linwood. So I reviewed this agreement early this afternoon. I thought it was pretty bland, to be honest with you. It's got a 2-year renewal. And see, beyond that, while I haven't spoken with Matt Janicki about this directly, and I don't know, Brenda, if you have, but I got the impression that this is somewhat a matter of housekeeping. That perhaps some agreements lapsed or there never was a formal agreement, so they're trying to get this in place.
So there wasn't agreement with Macklin, but Menominee Falls always maintained
Yeah.
our sewer system, our sewer maintenance.
Oh.
And so now they don't maintain our sewer maintenance. However, the Macklin expense is part of the interceptor expense.
Yep.
And that gets broken out between all the communities on the interceptor. So I think that their point is that we pay for the maintenance at Macklin and then we transfer it out between the communities involved. Since we're the ones doing the interceptor billing anyway. Is my guess.
This 2-year agreement, Ben, is that pretty standard or? Do they usually go longer or shorter or?
You know, I honestly thought the 2-year time frame was kind of short. But it's got an automatic renewal. And parties have, I think it's 3 months prior to termination to notify.
Yeah.
I mean, it's neither here nor there to me if that's a good thing or a bad thing, you know, unlike the fire department contracts, right? Like if for some reason you get 21 months into this thing and you find out that, boy, they're really gouging you on charges or whatever. Well, it's 21 months, you've got you're never too far away from being able to change it up, but to be honest, that's never been talked about since I've been village engineer. So I found it pretty reasonable. I honestly didn't have any comments in reviewing this.
Becker?
Was there a percentage increase on this contract compared to the previous? Or just the form of the base?
Good question. So I'll say that it didn't actually spell out dollar amounts. It just said that they're gonna do it at their current rates.
It also references an appendix A, which
I haven't seen.
I don't see anywhere.
Is this something that maybe should be tabled till we get more details on that?
You know, I think it's. Brenda, help me out. They're waiting for us to discuss it and review it. I honestly don't even know.
They were gonna take it to their board, but I thought it was last week with their board meeting unless they're taking it next week.
Yeah, so maybe.
I haven't heard from Matt this week, so I don't know,
I thought if they read our water meters, we sign this agreement.
but. Really not.
You could either table it. I honestly don't think that there's any harm in that or approve on the condition of, you know, taking separate action on appendix A, which I don't know
I
if
mean,
that's
and I think
possible or not.
The cost is whatever maintenance that it needs. They've always done that under the contract with us that, you know, it was the sewer maintenance agreement, so they would do whatever needs fixing at their discretion and kind of just gets filled out.
Sometimes,
And cost share.
sometimes we use an outside contractor for having work on the pumps and things like that. Menominee Falls would just administer it, and then we pay the bill.
Right. Just added.
And again, the way it works, there's 4 different communities that contribute flow to the interceptor. At that point, I guess it's just 3, and that would be Landon, Lisbon, and Menominee Falls. And this is an maintenance, operation and maintenance expense. So the interceptor agreement says that O&M expenses get divvied up according to the percentage of flow from each of those communities, which is monitored continuously. So in effect, I think Menominee Falls probably makes up like half the flow to that lift station. So when they invoice Landon,
They're paying most of it.
they're paying half of their, Brendan divvies it up and turns around and probably bills them for half of that anyways.
Yeah, I would be willing to additionally approve with the understanding that we need some further clarification as to the cost structure and a copy of appendix A. So I'll make that motion, I guess, and we'll see if it flies.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion and possible action on payment of the bills.
Make a motion that we pay the bills as recommended by the finance committee meeting earlier this evening.
We have a motion and second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Engineers report.
Nothing further to report, but actually I take that back, one thing. On January 19th, we had a startup at the Custer Lane lift station. That went well enough that all the temporary bypass pumps are gone. The permanent pumps are being operated by all the equipment that's inside that secured heated building. There's provisions for a connection for the external generators that the village already has, if there happens to be a disruption in the power service there. So the system is wired into the Sussex master SCADA computers, so they get any alarms and stuff like that. So it's a much better situation down there, and I think that's why Ron went on vacation. All the pumps anymore.
That smelled kind of funny down there that day. But it's nice that that project was getting pretty close to $1 million. Ron spent a lot of time down there, Ben and I did. Getting flushed down the toilet's a pretty complicated business, yes. And we now have a completed project. We have the ability, if we lose power, that we can plug our stuff and keep going.
And the natural gas generators should, last I heard, show up next month. It's only
We're supposed to
a
be
year
here
behind
August.
schedule. in that generator.
And that is kind of the model for what the other 2 lift station upgrades
Correct.
will look like.
Correct. So,
There were a couple of changes made on the fly down there that to improve serviceability. Pretty intense time down there. Thank you, Ben. Hector, attorney's report.
Nothing further at this time.
I'm gonna ruin the string. I have something further again. Chief, thank you for representing us. And again, prayers for all of our officers And I hope that it's a long time before our police department has to make an appearance as they did today. Thank you, everybody. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Have a motion and second to adjourn. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Let's go home. Thank you, everybody.
Hi.